Chapter 1. It was the smell that began to drive Thomas slightly mad. Not being alone for over 3 weeks, not the white walls, ceiling, and floor, not the light of windows, or the fact that they never turned off the lights. None of that. They taking his watch, they fed him the exact same meal 3 times a day. Slab of ham, mashed potatoes, raw carrots, slice of bread, water. Never spoke to him, never allowed anyone else in the room. No books, no movies, no games. Complete isolation. For over 3 weeks now, though he'd begun to doubt his tracking of time, which was basically pure on instinct. He tried to best guess when night had fallen, made sure he only slept what felt like normal hours. The meals helped, but when night had fallen, the meals helped, but they didn't seem to come regularly, even if he was meant to feel disorientated. Alone, in a padded room devoid of color, the only exceptions a small, almost hidden stainless steel toilet in the corner, and an old wooden desk that Thomas had no use for. Alone in an unbearable silence which limited time to think about the disease rooted inside him, the flare, that silent, creeping virus that slowly took away everything that made a person human. None of this drove him crazy, but he stank, and for some reason that his nerves on a sharp wire, cutting into the solid blood of his sanity. That they didn't let him shower or bathe, hadn't provided him with a change of clothes since he'd arrived or anything to clean his body with. A simple rag would have helped. He could dip it in the water they gave him to drink and clean his face at least, but he had nothing, only the clothes he'd been wearing when they locked him away. Not even bedding. He slept all curled up, his butt wedged in the corner of the room, arms folded, trying to hide some warmth into himself, often shivering. He didn't know why the stench of his own body was the thing that startled him most. Perhaps that in itself it was a sign that he'd lost it. But for some reason, he deteriorating, so if I butchered that, hygiene pushed against his mind, causing horrific thoughts. Like he was rotting, decomposing, his insides turning as rancid as his outside felt. That was what worried him, as irrational as it seemed. He had plenty of food and just enough water to quench his thirst. He got plenty of rest, and he exercised as best as he could in a small room, often running in place for hours. Roger told him that being filthy had nothing to do with the strength of your heart or the functioning of your lungs. All the same, his mind was beginning to believe that his unceasing stench represented death rushing in, about to swallow him whole. Those dark thoughts, in turn, were starting to make him wonder if Teresa had been lying after all, that last time they'd spoken, when she'd said it was too late for Thomas, and insisted that he'd succumbed to the flare rapidly, had become crazy and violent, that he'd already lost his sanity before coming to this awful place. Even Brenda had warned him that things were about to get bad. Maybe both they'd both been right. I messed that up. And underneath all that worry was the worry for his friends. What had happened to them? Where were they? What was the flare doing to their minds? After everything they'd been subjected to, was this how it was all going to end? The rage crept in, like a shivering rat looking for a spot of warmth, a crumb of food. And with every passing day came an increasing danger, so intense that Thomas sometimes caught himself shaking uncontrollably before he reeled the fury back in and pocketed it. He didn't want it to go away for good. He only wanted to store it and let it build. Wait for the right time, the right place, to unleash it. Wicked had done all this to him. Wicked had taken his life and those of his friends and were using them for whatever purposes they deemed necessary, no matter the consequences. And for that, they would pay. Thomas swore this to himself 1,000 times a day. All these went through his mind as he sat, backed against the wall, facing the door, and the ugly wooden desk in front of it. In what he guessed was the late morning of his 22nd day as a captive in the White Room. He always did this after eating breakfast, after exercising, hoping against hope that the door would open, actually open, all the way, the whole door, not just the little slot on the bottom through which they slid his room meals. He'd already tried countless times to get the door open himself. And the desk doors were empty, nothing there but the smell of mildew and cedar. He looked every morning just in case something might have magically appeared while he slept. Those things happen sometimes when you were dealing with wicked. And so he sat, staring at the door, waiting. White walls and silence. The smell of his own body. He left to think about his friends, Minho, Newt, Frypan, and other few laters still alive. Brenda and George, who'd vanished from sight after their rescue on their giant bird. Harriet and Sonia, the other girls from Group B, Eris. But Brenda and her warning to him after he'd woken up in the White Room for the first time. How had she spoken in his mind? Was she on his side or not? Most of all, he thought about Teresa. He couldn't get her out of his head, even though he hated her a little more with every passing moment. Her last words to him had been wicked is good, and right or wrong. To Thomas, she'd come to represent all the terrible things that had happened. Every time he thought of her, rage boiled inside him. Maybe all that rage, anger, was the last string tethering him to sanity as he waited. Eat, sleep, exercise, just for revenge. That's what he did for 3 more days, alone. On the 26th day, the door opened. Thank you guys for listening. I know this isn't a very good episode, but this is all I can do for now until I finish the issues with Code Time, which I'm using right now. Even though it's not 10 minutes yet, it will stop at 10 minutes, I'm guessing. I'm saying this quickly. Thank you guys for the support. I hope you understand that I can't do my episodes long enough, so I'll be doing more and more episodes every day, depending on how many episodes I can do. So thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye. This was chapter 1 of the Maze of the Death Cure, the Maze Runner series.